with another edition of This Day in African American Baseball History. This by history, whatever you choose to call it. I think we're going to have a great time discussing some of these items tonight. First of all, I want to thank everybody for joining. If you've never joined me before, I'm a baseball historian with a number of books published going back to 1992. Some of the people might come into this broadcast, they weren't even born in 1992. And I was already publishing books. How about that? And what I'm going to give you is some historic feats that happened on this day that relate to African American baseball players. And also, I am going to give you commentary about some of those things, maybe some things that I experienced through those 45 years. Typically, those are things that you know nothing about unless I tell you about them. So we usually have a lot of fun here, and I just want to get started. So we're going to jump right here, and we're a minute in, and I usually try to at least do about 20 minutes, all right? Sometimes it comes short of that. Most time it's over that. So, so I'm Phil S. Dixon, baseball historian. So let's jump right in. And of course, today is November 19, 2025. So I'm going to be talking about some things that happened on November 19th through the eras, all right? Okay, so let's go, how about this one? November 19th, 1975. Man, I was 19. I turned 19 years old that year. And that was the same year the Cincinnati Reds second baseman Joe Morgan is named MVP, most valuable player of the National League. In 146 games, Morgan had 163 hits and 132 walks and scored 107 runs and batted 327. And that's only part of the story. Some ball players, I'm telling you, these numbers, they tell a lot, but not everything. I remember Toby Harrah. I don't know if you've ever heard of Toby Harrah. He played for different teams most of my youth. He used to say that statistics are like a girl in a bikini. He said it shows a lot, but it doesn't show everything. And so these statistics do not show how valuable that guy was to the Cincinnati Reds in 1975. The Big Red Machine, they had a lot of good players, but Joe Morgan was one of them. And so he beat out some pretty good guys, Hall of Famers, besides himself, for the Most Valuable Player Award. So that's Joe Morgan. I had a chance to meet Joe Morgan on several occasions. And I think the last time, maybe in the last time I saw him, I'm not sure. It seems like I saw him at another event, but maybe after that. But but I definitely saw him when Buck O'Neil passed away. And Buck O'Neil, who is now in the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. But when he passed away, they had an event down at Municipal Auditorium. It was memorial service. And Joe spoke at that memorial service. And he always thought that Buck not getting in the Hall of Fame in 2006 broke his heart. And indeed, Buck did go there and speak highly for all of those guys that did get in. It was like 16 of them. And they got in, but he didn't get in. And a lot of people were really pushing for Buck to get in. And I remember even talking to Buck. Buck was getting up in age at that time. So occasionally I would be on the same program with Buck. I remember one time we were doing a telethon for Channel 19, a PBS station, and they had Buck there, and I could tell he was really tired. I said, "Hey, Buck," I said, "Hey, you can go on home. I can handle this." And so I went on, and I did about everything that Buck probably would have been doing. And so that was John Buck O'Neil. But that was one of the last times that I got a chance to actually shake the hands of the great Joe Morgan, and somewhere around here I have his autograph, and that's a prized possession because I always thought he was just a fantastic player. Started off with the Houston Colt 45s, and should have stayed in Houston, but hey, they traded the guy. I don't know who got the best of that deal. I don't even remember who they traded him for, but I know that the Cincinnati Reds really took advantage of this guy as a great second baseman. So we got a couple people joining me. I see somebody said David's channel saying hello. Somebody named BSK underscore Daniel 123 says hello. Then there's somebody here from the Dominican Republic. Hello, everybody. And somebody say I want to go to the Hall of Fame in Kansas City where I am eating barbecue. Okay, well, first of all, we don't have a Hall of Fame in Kansas City. I'm a co-founder of that baseball museum. It's not a Hall of Fame, it's a museum. But yeah, you're correct. We do have that in Kansas City. And if you ever come to Kansas City, now if you follow me here and you send me a message and you let me know you're coming, sometime if I'm in town, I go down and talk and greet people all the time. Sometimes I give personal tours. So that's open to anyone who's on my line who follows me. If you come to Kansas City, if I'm here, I will give you a tour if I'm in town. Now, I do speak a lot outside of Kansas City, and I have a wonderful presentation, guys. I wish that you could hear that presentation. But if I'm in town, I will. Now you got to pay for your own barbecue, but I will be happy to give you a tour. All right, no charge. Right now, hey, look, I might say, well, I'll take a love offer, maybe you have one, but otherwise, no, there's no charge for that. Okay, okay. And then somebody said, did you like Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? Of course I did. He was a great player. He was a great player. And there's a lot of great players came from the Dominican Republic. I have to talk about that sometime. And some of the history of the Dominican Republic, going back to the Trujillo days when he was being dictator. Does that ring a bell with some of you people? A dictator? Okay. So anyway, let's stay to baseball. Okay, let me get back to baseball. Okay, so that was Joe Louis. All right. And I will say, a year later, in 1976, Joe Louis, Joe Morgan won his second MVP, and he became the first second baseman in the American and National League to have back-to-back MVPs. Just didn't know if you knew that. All right, so let's go to another one. How about this? November 19th, let's see, 1993, November 19th, 1993, Delino Lamont DeShields is traded to the Dodgers, Los Angeles Dodgers, from the Montreal Expos, and for Pedro Martinez. And now, interesting, Delino, he always gave tribute to the Negro Leagues by wearing his pants up high so you can see most of his sock, kind of like what they were doing back in the day. We'll just say that. Because at that particular time, most of the players were wearing pants all the way down to their neck, to their ankles. And so he decided to wear his the old-fashioned way as a tribute to the Negro League, and he was pretty outspoken about that. So they ended up trading him for Pedro Martinez. Was that a good deal or a bad deal? Somebody can tell me that, right? So anyway, and his son, he has a son that's playing now, and his son is famous for his Negro League tattoos that he's put on his body. How about that? So yeah, you could go look this stuff up. I don't make this stuff up. I just enjoy all the things around baseball. In addition, I like the game, right? So, but some of the things that are connected to baseball would be more fascinating. All right. So we got two things. All right. Here's another one. You probably wouldn't get this. November 19th, 1971. Boy, I remember I would have been in the 10th grade that year. 19th, Bubba Stevenson Lewis. So he was the original owner of the Memphis Red Sox, the Negro National League franchise, died in Memphis, Tennessee. As the owner of Lewis Brothers Funeral Home, he handled the body of Martin Luther King after he was assassinated in 1968, and that ghastly murder that occurred down in Memphis. Interesting thing. Well, I can tell you a lot about that. I went down and interviewed Lewis. Lewis' widow was still alive, and his son was running the funeral home. So I actually went into that funeral home, and they showed me the room where Martin Luther King was embalmed. He was actually embalmed in Memphis by Bubba Lewis, and a lot of people don't know that. So that came all through that funeral home there. And the original owner of the Memphis Red Sox, not one of the Martin brothers. And so I had a chance to interview his wife, and I have a wonderful picture of him in my photographic history that came out in 1992. That's a great book, guys, if you don't have it. I think it's a book that you ought to put on your shelf. And you probably heard of Bill James. Bill James said it was one of the top 10 books of the entire 1990s. So it's a good book. And like I said, I've been around, and you can tell me talking to you that I have lots of interaction with all kinds of things related to this baseball subject. So you come in, you're listening to baseball, but who would ever thought that I could tell you where Martin Luther King was embalmed just by listening to a baseball broadcast, because baseball is also social history, and that's one thing I try to tell people when uh, they try to follow the game, right? And but they think it's just baseball, but it's bigger than that. It's life. Baseball is life. All right, somebody named Brenda just jumped in and said hello. Hello there, Brenda. Stay around for a minute. We're just kind of running through some baseball things. I will also tell you about Lewis. He ran into some financial trouble, so he had to borrow some money, and he borrowed the money from the Martin brothers, who they had the hospital, and they had a really fancy drugstore there in Memphis in the black community. Well, it turns out that by the end of the 20s or whatever, mid 20s, the Martin brothers owned the team, and they also owned the park. Now, Memphis had one of the few parks that were actually owned by black people. And so you come to Kansas City, like the Monarchs, they're playing and at that time it was Milbach Field, but they didn't own it, they're renting it. So there were only a few places, I can think of three right off. Um, the guy had the Pittsburgh Keystones that were in the Negro National League. He built a park. Then they had the one in Memphis, and you had Gus Greenlee at a park too, Greenlee Field. But there wasn't a lot of parks that these African American professional teams played in that were owned by African Americans. Okay, so just a little history there. So Bubba Lewis, Robert Stevenson Lewis, man. Okay, I have to come back to him because he will come up again, and I will talk in some more detail because I have lots more on him. All right then. Okay, let's look at uh, November 19th, 1921. I'm just jumping all around today. And this is what I call my coming and going. So, like Lewis passed away, so that's a going. But a coming would be November 19th, 1921. A former Baltimore Elite Giants catcher. Now, I always do this. I always say Baltimore Elite. And I always do that because people are always saying elite, and I'm always trying to convert them to elite. So every time I say elite, you're going to follow it with elite, okay? So we get everybody to say elite instead of say light stuff. All right. So a former Baltimore Elite Giants catcher who established a major league record for home runs in a season with 41 in 1953, Roy Campanella, entered the world on this day in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And of course, he received a National League MVP awards, more than one. How about this? We're talking about Joe Morgan had two, but Roy Campanella had three. Yeah, one in 1951, 1953, and 1955. I don't know how much you know about Roy Campanella. I always have this big picture here. It's a real big picture of Roy Campanella. And I've had this for a number of years. I probably ought to frame it, maybe put a couple of his baseball cards with it, and make it a showpiece there. But anyway, I've had that for a number of years. Used to have two of them. I think one got waterlogged or something like that. But anyway, Roy Campanella, an all-time great. Of course, he won his MVP awards with the Brooklyn Dodgers. All right. Okay, so let's keep it rolling. By the way, I never did meet Campanella. That was one thing. It seemed like every time I was somewhere, either he had left or it didn't show. That was another one. But I was in Los Angeles quite a bit, but I never got a chance to meet him. All right. He's featured pretty prominently in my book, The Negro Baseball Leagues of Photographic History. Okay, so let's go. We got a couple of more. How about November 19th, 1945? Bobby Tolan, who led the National League in stolen bases with 57 in 1970 as a member of the Cincinnati Reds, was born in Los Angeles, California. In high school, Tolan played for the legendary Negro League coach Chet Brewer, along with other future big leaguers. Yeah, Bobby Tolan. Chet Brewer, I've talked about him a great deal. I actually stayed at Chet Brewer's house when I went out to Los Angeles for the first time. I stayed out there with him and his wife there, Tina. And she was from Kansas City, Kansas. Now, that was his second wife. His first wife had passed away. His son was still alive at the time. His daughter, he had two children, and the daughter had just recently passed. So I didn't meet the daughter, but I met the son and talked to him on many occasions. So Chip Brewer had a team called the Chip Brewer Rookies, and Bobby Tolan was one of his players. So if you ever get a chance to talk to Bobby Tolan, be sure and ask him about Chip Brewer. If you ever get a chance to talk to Reggie Smith or Eddie Murray, Eddie Murray was his bad boy. Who else? Enos Cabell, if you ever get a chance. And some of them have passed away now. And, what's his name? Watson scored baseball's 1 million, 1 million. I guess it was 1 million run. That's what they said. So anyway, Watson, that went on, and he was with the he led the New York Yankees. Is the general manager to the World Series. So anyway, yeah, he had a lot of good people. Willie Crawford was another one. So we can go on and on and on about some of these great players that he had. But that was Chet Brewer, and this was Bobby Tolan. And so those are a few. Let's see. Do I have anything else I want to cover tonight? I guess that does it for tonight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. I guess that's enough, guys. We're pulling up on 16 minutes. I do want to say hello to a few people here. And if you have a question or something, go ahead and shoot that question to me real quickly because I'll get out of here in 20 minutes. So we have about 3 more minutes if you have a question that you just have to have answered. I would tell you this. If you like this kind of broadcast, something that stimulates your mind, then you might want to go ahead and subscribe. And I come on often. I'm about daily now, sometimes twice a day. One of these days, I'm going to do a triple header, too. I'll come on 3 times a day with something unique. Now, coming up, I do have some different ball players. I'll probably do a feature. If I come back on again tonight, if I do, I'm going to do probably a feature on an all-star team and then run down a list of all-stars selected by some famous person, and then give you a lot of information related to that player and the players on the list. So, but that's kind of what I do. So it's been a fantastic, but it's not really a passion. I always tell people I don't have a job, I have a passion. So, and you can't hire me. You can hire me this. Nobody can pay me for this. So that about does it for me, guys. I can ramble on and on and on, but I don't want to do that. But I do appreciate you coming on tonight. And if you've been with me from the beginning, thank you. If you've been here a couple of minutes and you bounced in and say, who is this guy? I appreciate that too. And on the way out, I didn't say hello to Tony Rivera. And he said, I want to go to the Hall of Fame, Kansas City, but I didn't mention that. Tony. And then also Biggie Cheese. I'm going to look some of you guys up and see what you do, right? You know, some of you things that you do. And so I appreciate your follow, and I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to listen. So I'm going to be out of here, guys, and I want to thank you. And I'll be back tomorrow with another day of this day in Black baseball history. We'll be looking at the November 20th edition. And I'm looking over here now, and guys, we're going to be talking about some guys, baseball players who play basketball. Tomorrow, I see a couple of them here. Let's see, we're going to talk about a little bit about some winter baseball and a couple of Hall of Famers. Okay, so we've got some good stuff. So I'll see you next time. Be sure and hit that subscription button if you like it. I like to twist your arm to make you do it, but I don't do that. Hopefully the information will twist you, right? All right. So thank you, guys. So you have a nice day, and this is Phil Dixon with this day's edition of This Day in African American Baseball History, November 19th, 2025.